Hello, and welcome to this edition of Bayou Time. I'm your host, Keith Whiteside, licensed clinical social worker with Terrible Home Care. Very glad you are joining us. However, you may be joining us, we appreciate it, and we're always glad to be able to get updates, especially from our state representatives, while they are there working so hard for us in Baton Rouge. We welcome back into the program Beryl Amedee. Beryl, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, good morning. Thanks for being here at the Capitol, at least electronically.
I know that's right. Well, we're glad you're there representing your constituents and, of course, state representative of District 51 in Gray. And so a lot of people, I think, don't necessarily understand what it means when you go into session, especially in these types of sessions. And this is a fiscal session. So if you wouldn't mind maybe telling us a little bit about what that means for those people at home.
Sure. Every odd-numbered year, the legislature goes into a fiscal-only session, and that means that we're meeting for a shorter number of weeks and that we're only able to carry no more than 5 non-fiscal bills. So every year we do handle the budget. Every year we're required to pass a budget, and it's supposed to be balanced by law. If we fail to do that by the time session ends, we're required to call ourselves back into a special session and keep working until we get it done. So the budget is every year. But in a fiscal only year, that's the only time we can bring bills that would deal with taxes and fees, for example. So in a even numbered year, we can't increase a tax or a fee. Actually, we can't even decrease one. So a lot of the adjustments are done in fiscal only sessions.
Yeah, and again, you talk about how it's a shorter session, but a shorter session simply means that y'all are going to talk about a whole lot of stuff in a faster pace because, quite frankly, the budget matters. It makes a huge difference. It's one of the, we don't always like to talk money. That's one of the things that we talk about socially, right? That's one of the more uncomfortable things to have to talk about money, but we do, and we have to, and we've got to be able to figure it out, and we got to be able to balance it out. And those are things that take a lot of time, discussion, energy, and committees.
That's right. We always joke that here in Louisiana, the law requires us to pass a balanced budget. You might not like how it gets balanced, but it has to be balanced. Congress, on the other hand, doesn't have that same requirement, and it seems that Congress can even print money. We can't do that here, so we have to work within the boundaries that are set by law.
Yeah. And so, again, it gives us the idea of focusing on some of those bills, and some of those are fiscal. A lot of those I know that y'all go in and y'all discuss, and they're related to taxes. They're related to some of the finances that the state has and the limitations that the state has to operate on. So it's a really good point. We've got all these limitations nationally. There's no balance to it. And I love the idea that they can print money. If they need more money, they print more money, right?
That seems to be the pattern. So
Yeah.
one of the things that we're working on for this session is we currently have extra money in the state budget.
Right.
And so when we have excess money, we're going to argue over exactly what we're going to spend that on. And there are some ideas being proposed. There's a push to raise the expenditure limit. And of course, there's a counter push to not raise the expenditure limit, to basically live within our means and to use the excess in ways that make sense, like paying off debt, for example. So we have a plan that we're working on where we could pay off the unfunded accrued liability. And as you know, that's the teacher's retirement fund and the state employees retirement fund. We could actually pay off the excess debt. And if we do that, the amount of money that we save just in the interest that we've been paying can go to some really good uses. It would, if we pay off the unaccrued liability for the teachers, then that would allow local school districts to have enough money where if they wanted to, they could give their own raises. They don't have to wait on the state to send money down. They'll still have it basically in their pockets. So we like giving the locals more autonomy. In some districts, their teachers' salaries might be suitable, whereas in other districts, they might want to give a greater raise than even the state could propose. And so I'm hoping that as we move forward, we do follow that plan. That's what I'll be supporting, that we use some of the excess for common sense measures that pay down debt, that frees us from heavy interest, and that allows us more flexibility in what we can spend money on in the coming few years.
Yeah, and it also looks at where that money is going to go, and let's make sense out of it. I love the idea of paying something off so we're not having to pay any interest on that. And so it moves money into usable funds and decreasing debt all at the same time, right?
That's
And let's just be smart with the excess money.
right. It's what we do with our household budgets. It's what we do with our business budgets. It's much more fun to look for things to invest in than it is to have to give up money paying off interest. Interest doesn't help us. It helps somebody, the bank, but
Right,
it
right.
doesn't help our households or our businesses to have hefty interest.
Right. And again, a lot of those funds are there because of the destruction, the hurricane. There's some of that money that was kind of held over for some of the decisions that were made in the last couple of years through our COVID challenges as well. But we have some monies that are there. And I love the fact that let's fight over what we do with that money, right? Instead of fighting
Yeah,
over monies that we're trying to beg for or ask for down in the future.
right. And besides trying to be wise and pay off debt early, some of the other things that we're discussing are whether or not to raise the expenditure limit. And as I said, that's going to be a hot topic here, probably starting next week when House Appropriations hears the main budget bill on Monday. So there are those who believe we should raise the expenditure limit so that we can spend this excess money on projects that we've been waiting for.
Right.
But if we do that and we don't pay off debt, then we're still stuck in the same
We're in the
pattern
same
that we've
place,
been in.
same place.
Each of us would be allowed to bring 5 non-fiscal bills. So while we have not maxed out, there are plenty of bills that are not related directly to the budget. And this year we have lots of hot topics that are drawing plenty of input from the public, and which I love. I think that's part of the process. And so we've been hearing bills on subject matter that is very uh, sensitive to some people. People are passionate about it. And we've handled a few bills this week on the House side. We're handling more next week. And on the Senate side, I'm not sure if some of the most hot topic bills have started to move yet, but it's exciting. And this week, we've handled in House Education, we've handled bills that concern things like the use of pronouns in reference to students or staff. We've handled a bill that would take the motto, "In God We Trust." Under current law, they're supposed to have that motto displayed somewhere in the school. And there's a bill by Representative Horton that would make it so that schools have to put that in each individual classroom, because it seems that in reality, the schools may have placed it somewhere in the school, but where is it?
Right.
And can the
And who
students
sees
even
it?
see it?
Yeah.
Yes. And so that one moved out of the House. It's gone to I'm sorry, it moved out of the committee. It's gone to the floor. The bills that concern the use of pronouns or other names for students has also moved out of the committee and will be on the House floor probably next week sometime. We've had bills related to health freedom that have been heard in committees, other committees, and they're going to be, one of the bills is going to be reheard next week because the proper process was not followed, and a lot of the people from the public who came to speak were not given that opportunity. So we're moving along, and the bills that I'm carrying this year are being scheduled shortly, so they'll be up in the next 2 to 3 weeks. And one of those bills is a parental rights constitutional amendment. And if it passes the legislature, it's going to be before the voters this fall. And it simply specifies in the Constitution that parental rights are fundamental. And I've been contacted by some people who are afraid that that would mean that parents can do anything they want, but that's not how it works.
Right.
Bill says parental rights are fundamental. It doesn't say parental rights are absolute. So we have to remember that no one in Louisiana has the right to harm children.
Right.
And that's not going to change with this amendment. In fact, it's going to get even better.
Right.
Another bill I'm carrying for the third time is a bring back recess bill, because as you know, in some schools, recess has pretty much disappeared.
Right.
And so this bill will provide for a minimum of 15 minutes of recess in grades K through 5. And those minutes will actually be allowed to be counted as instructional minutes to meet the daily requirement. And so I believe that this time this bill should pass. And when we see how positive the outcome is when students actually have some recess who haven't, maybe in the future we can increase that a little bit.
Right.
Because 15 minutes for a lower elementary student is really not enough time, but
Right.
it's a start. We have to
Right.
start somewhere.
Right.
And then another bill I'm carrying has to do with restricting central bank digital currency from being used in Louisiana. Central bank digital currency is a form of money that would be created and administrated by the Federal Reserve in such a way that it could be controlled from whatever level of government. And we don't want to have the government dictating who may or may not spend money today and what they may or may not spend it on.
Right.
So I believe it's important to get ahead of this before the attempts are made to bring it here.
Right.
And set up our laws so that it's restricted.
Okay.
Another bill I'm bringing has to do with the requirement that when a property insurance company may be beginning to fail, they're supposed to turn over certain information to the guarantee fund. And what we've seen so far over the last few years, especially with all our hurricane troubles and claims, when a company is failing, if that information doesn't get to the guarantee fund in time and in a useful way, the fund, it can't manage it, and people end up having to wait months and maybe years before their claims are handled when their insurance company has failed. So this should resolve that problem.
Yeah, and so some really great bills, really addressing the needs of the people, especially that last one, just giving some transparency to some of these insurance companies when they get in difficult situation. They have to let they have to let the insurance commission know, and they have to be forthright about making sure that we can use some of those funding for that. And so I know it's difficult to have to talk about money and difficult to have to talk about these limited five numbers of bills from each of the representatives, but we very much appreciate you being there on the Hill and taking care of everything there at the Capitol. So thanks so much for what you're doing. We appreciate it. We look forward for more updates whenever you can, Beryl.
Sure. Thank you.
Very good. Have a great day.
You too.
All right, guys. And that will do it for this particular segment of Buy You Time. Don't go anywhere. A whole lot more right here on HTV.